Good afternoon. Obviously, you guys are all well aware that we're here for the to learn a little bit more about the BRRRR strategy, to buy, rent, buy, rehab, rent, and refinance. So we're gonna go through that. Leor and then Taylor is somewhere around here.
Oh, I'm over here. Sorry.
The three of us partnered on this deal. We'll go through. So sorry. Let me back up. For those of you I haven't met, and those of you the first time coming to one of these, my name is Willie Mandrell, one of the organizers.
The kind of money strategy everyone knows is you turn a dining room into a bedroom situation. That's exactly what we're going to do here. So ideally, when our finished product is going to be a 4-bed, 1-bath unit with parking. Always helps. Basically, the condition, I mean, you can see this unit and the top and the third floor unit are pretty similar shape. I don't know why it was like this. I mean, it's been owner occupied. Obviously not these two units. I think every owner says they're going to do the business for 2.5 years now, 3 years. My first deal that I've actually closed on Craigslist. When I first found it, I was like, oh, here we go again. I've been through the ringer, but I mean, if you look every other couple days, sometimes you see some for sale by owners, you see some quick ads. Usually they turn out to nothing, but you got to take your chances, right? It's kind of like direct mail, everything. All of these strategies is just you gotta keep hitting it over and over again. So we walked. So like Willie said, once we walked it, it wasn't really a condo play for us. I mean, we want to hold this building, so we just decided to go with the BRRRR. So again, we're going to undergo full renovations of this unit and the top unit. We're not creating luxury here. Just yes.
Sorry, can I ask a question already?
Yeah.
You say you're not going to do a condo play. How'd you decide that?
Mainly
It's not a condo neighborhood.
It's not really a condo neighborhood. Plus, just because of how much, based on our purchase price and what we think the ARV is, I mean, if we can hold a building, we'd rather hold a building anyway, right? I mean, if we could do condos and hold them, but, for this kind of neighborhood where we want to sit on it anyway, yeah.
All comes with plumbing. Electrical doesn't really go wrong throughout the year. The electrical is kind of one of those things that you can update when there's issues. The plumbing is, hey, I don't have any heat. There's water coming out of the ceiling. Those are issues that you really have. So those are the things that we want to update now, so we don't have issues 5 years down the road. The reason the triple deck is great is because all your plumbing is in one wall. We didn't have to come in here and demo everything and get crazy. We just demoed literally the bathroom and the kitchen, which abuts to each other. The plumber's going to come in, run all new plumbing, vent stacks and everything right into that one wall, close it back up, put a new bathroom, new kitchen in there, and we're pretty much good to go. Everything else is going to get new paint, new flooring, like I said, refinishing the floors. And I just realized she's recording me now, and I started stuttering a little bit.
I'm still going.
So yeah, you clean it right up, and like I said, we'll get them rented. So.
Plumbing, and now we get calls all the freaking time,
yeah,
right? It's just like, oh, toilet leak here, kitchen's here. And it's honestly, it's not even, it's kind of the money, but it's also just such a headache to deal with, right? So if you can get it up front, definitely preferable. And then in terms of financial strategy, that last point, again, with the amount of equity that we think we can gain once the renovation's done, we'll talk a little bit more about how we finance the deal, but we have equity partners, meaning people put money as equity investors into this deal. So we think by the end of this, with our ARV, we can kind of refinance the deal, hence the last R. And then place long-term permanent debt, like 30-year mortgage on this, and hold it out.
Windows are all coming out. Those are the big items: roof, windows, heating systems, all the plumbing, all the electrical, and then everything else is really just getting it de-leaded and going to town with paint. There's probably like $20,000, $30,000 in paint here. Right. So. But yeah, it shouldn't take us too long in terms of timeline. I'm not sure if you were going to talk about that, but our goal is to really, have this ready for the springtime market. Hopefully it's all leased up by July at the absolute latest. With the mindset that it'll most likely be, a Section 8 play that we're trying to put here. So we understand that we're probably going to have to get this thing ready by May, to get through all of our inspections and everything else that comes along with the housing authorities, and hopefully have this thing, all 3 units, leased up by July.
And one of the and basically our purchase price was $650. We got a construction loan that basically wraps right into the mortgage. That came in for $200,000. And then the other nice terms with using a commercial lender is we actually got interest only for the first year. So basically it minimizes our debt cost while we're kind of stabilizing the building, doing all the work. Hopefully we can get it stabilized, like Willie said, within a couple months, so we can get a little bit more cash flow within in the first 6 months when it's rented. And then after year one, the mortgage goes to a fully amortizing mortgage. And then the other term is that it is a 5-year fixed mortgage for the first 5 years, and then it adjusts every other 5 years. Again, ideally, those are good terms for the upfront part of it. I mean, I don't love to be in an adjustable rate mortgage. I think there's a little bit too much market risk. So that's why we're going to try to refinance within a year or whatever it is, and put long-term 30-year fixed permanent debt on it, so we don't have to worry, about where the market's going to be in the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, so if I can just 100,000 for rehab. So really what you need, and again, it's actually an 80-20 loan that we got, not 25% down, so 20% down.
Yeah.
We basically, I'm the investor. I have a private lender in Lisa right here. I go to Lisa and I say, Lisa, can I borrow $150,000 from you at 10%? The reason Lisa's going to do that for me is because she knows me. She's come to some other projects or whatever it may be. She knows that she can't get 10% in the stock market. She's getting 5% or 6%. She's getting 2% for her CD in the bank. Very enticing for her to give me, $150,000 for 10%. I take Lisa's $150,000 and I give that to the bank. That's my down payment on the $650. The bank is going to say, okay, we're now going to give you the money to finish acquiring the property, and we're going to give you another $200,000 in construction financing to fix up the property. We submit to the bank a budget. Here's what we're going to do: new heating system, new roof, and everything else. They do 2 appraisals at the time of closing or before closing. They say, what is the property worth today? Yes, we agree it's worth $650 and it's as is condition. After you do the things that you're going to do, we believe the property is going to be worth $950,000 after that, right? Does that make sense to everyone? Right? So that's all they're basically doing, is they're saying, what is the property worth today? What is the property worth in the future? I got my down payment from my private lender. After it's all said and done, in this particular situation, there's 2 ways to look at it, and I don't want to confuse anyone or get too deep in it. Lisa can look at her money as debt, meaning I have to pay her back in 12 months. Or Lisa could be an equity partner, meaning she's going to come in for the long haul. She sees the opportunity that we have in this building, the appreciation, the rent, the cash flow that's going to come out of it. I'm going to ride it out with you guys over the next 4 or 5 years and see where it is. In our situation, we had equity partners come in with their money. They're going to let Leor and I and Taylor and I dictate what's going to happen here over the next 4 or 5 years. But like Leor said, our ideal situation is we're trying to refinance the whole loan and pay them their money back within the next 24 to 36 months tops. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Hopefully that was a little bit clear. Sure.
So as an equity partner, how do you decide what percentage to pay her?
I mean,
each month, then you get rents?
It's negotiable. I mean, it really, and that's the beauty of using a private lender, is we're having this conversation. I'm using Lisa as an example,
right.
But we're having this conversation about what is best for you. What are you earning in the market, Lisa? And if it's 6%, and if I can pay you 10, why would she not entertain it? If she wants monthly payments, we're open to doing that. If she wants it all in one lump sum at the end of the year, like you do in a bank CD, we're open to that. It just has to make sense for both parties.
Well, because the reason I asked, I'm getting to that point where my investors are asking, could they have equity instead of debt payment? And I just don't know. I'm not.
It just really has to make sense for you and and if we raise debt on this one, if we had a debt partner, it probably wouldn't have made sense for us financially to do it. We wanted somebody who wanted to come in and say, we see the upside, we see what you're trying to do, and we want to stick it out for the long haul. We're going to end up paying that person more or giving up more of our overall financial position. But if we raise debt and we had to go out another, let's call it, if we're paying 10% or 12%, that's $1,500 a month. It would have thrown the numbers way off and not allowed us to actually get into the property. So it all really depends whether you go debt or equity or how. The beauty of working with another individual and not a bank is a bank's going to say, here's the loan, take it or leave it. Me working with Lisa or Tess or anybody else who's a private lender, I'm sitting, that doesn't work for me. How about we adjust it this way? How about we adjust it that way? And that allows us to kind of work at a situation that works for both parties, if that makes sense.
So the upside in terms of equity investments, are you doing this over several properties? I've never thought about equity within sort of like housing and renting and real estate.
No, so the question for those of you that can't hear in the back is, are our equity partners in on multiple properties? And the answer to that is no. The reason is every single property that Leor and I, this is our third building together. So we own 6 other units together, our third project together with myself and Leor and Taylor. And every single property that we do is in a separate LLC, a separate entity altogether. The reason being is, if Lisa's our equity partner on this deal, and for some reason, God forbid this deal fails, we don't want that to affect 6 other units that we own, right? And vice versa. If those deals are not good deals and something happens and there's fire, we don't want that to affect Lisa and our equity partners over here. So everything we do, we separate it into a separate LLC, a separate entity, its own tax ID. It's its own separate business altogether. We have a relationship together over multiple entities, but those entities have no relationship to each other whatsoever, if that makes sense.
And one other.
Sure.
Go ahead.
You use a separate LLC for every property?
Every single one. Every single one.
Yeah.
Is what's the difference between using Citizens Bank, a regular lender, a commercial lender, and then I'm pretty sure some of you are probably thinking the words hard money at some point, right? So the difference between the three is, number one, a Citizens Bank or Bank of America, you go in there for your own personal residence. You go to buy a condo, actually don't go to Bank of America, but that's a whole nother conversation. But that's the type of person, that's the type of loan that they would give you, as a residential loan for your own personal residence. If you go in there with an LLC and private lenders and equity partners, they're going to say, no, this is not what we do. We're not going to lend on equity. We want to see that the money's been sitting in your bank account for 2 to 3 months, and money needs to be seasoned, what they call. There's all types of lending guidelines, FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. When you go to a commercial lender, they're a community bank, a Needham Bank, an Eagle Bank, a City of Boston Credit Union. They're looking at more or less the deal itself, the property itself. They want to lend in their own communities, so they're going to lend to an LLC, a separate entity. Because remember, my LLC has a separate tax ID with no credit, no background, anything else. So I'm coming in and I'm personally guaranteeing, I'm co-signing for, lack of a better term, on that LLC. And that's why a commercial lender, does that make sense? The commercial lender would more likely give you a property or a loan based on the property and the deal itself versus on your personal credit and financial situation. Does that make sense? So that's the difference between a residential lender and a commercial lender. Why we don't go hard money is simply just the cost. The cost of hard money is 12% in 3 points. The lender that we're using right now is charging us 5.5 and no points, right? Or half a point. Half a point. 5.5% and half a point. You're talking about over a 12-month loan. Again, it's not going to take us that long here, but just to make the math easier, you're talking about a difference of $25,000, $30,000, especially when you get into the Boston market and properties start being $1 million, $2 million. You could be talking about $50,000 savings between using a hard money lender at 12 and a commercial bank at 6 or 5.5. That's $50,000 back into your pocket, $50,000 back into the deal. So those are the 3 type of lenders that are out there. Initially, what you're going to have to do if you're brand new and you've never done one of these before, you're going to have to go hard money. You're not going to be able to go to Eagle Bank and sit down with them and say, hey, I don't own my own home and I want to flip my own first property. They're not going to. They want to see that you have some type of resume. Deal number 1, deal number 2, like this, needs to go through hard money. Once you've established yourself, you have some type of resume, you can show the bank that you can done. You can cut your financing costs in half and go to a commercial lender, if that makes sense.
So which bank did you use for this deal?
Which bank?
Operating agreements, we have an attorney draft that up. So all percentages are stated right on that document, including who put how much money up front, right? How is the capital redistributed? So that's a really fancy way of saying, basically, anytime there's money being made by the building, whether it's through rent, or if it's a refinance, or it's a sale, it spells out exactly who gets what and in what order. Right? So equity investors have to get paid when we get paid. If it's a debt investor, right, it's like another lender, so they get paid before. So everything is spelled out right on that operating agreement, so that when the money starts flowing in, there's no question of how it's distributed. Well, that's
Include that, now clear.
just learning your market, right? I mean, I know everyone says that, but you know, when we go into these deals, when we get a call for a property, we know like within 2 minutes if this is worth our time or not, and we can evaluate it very quickly, right? So we understand our market, we know exactly what we're looking for, we know the numbers behind it, we understand what kind of rents we can get, if there's rents in place already, we understand if they're below market, above market, all that stuff. We understand the pricing too, right? So we know what the building is worth in this condition, we know what the building is worth, you know, renovated. So that's the very basis of it. Once you kind of understand the numbers, understand what you're looking for, that's when you can start really figuring out how to get these deals, right? I mean, you can find these what's called off market or what's called on market, right? So on market is anything if you go on Redfin or whatever the big websites are, you can look at listings and you can see what properties are available for sale. Typically, these kinds of properties are not on MLS, right? Just to give you a quick, you know, the agent side business behind this, if I was a listing agent on this property, I would not want to put this on MLS, just because most buyers are going to be using traditional financing, and you guys can see there's no way in hell, right, anyone's going to pass this, right? A residential lender is not going to allow you to live in this, so they're not going to loan on this. So as a listing agent, I'm going to go and try to find people that are either buying this with what's called cash, right, which usually means hard money, or commercial financing, but basically you're looking for professional investors, right? So that whole next goal is finding the property. So, you know, that's a whole nother conversation about, you know, there's different ways, whether you're doing it online, whether you're doing it through direct mail, whether you're cold calling. There's ways to find these deals. Once you start looking at these deals and you kind of feel comfortable with numbers, you know, then it's just kind of doing the deal. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah. So what was the question? Like getting started?
Yeah, like the basis of getting started.
So if you notice like what we're talking about here, I've talked about the bank and everything else, and Leo's talked about more of the acquisition and everything else. So I would say one of the first things you need to do too is find people that want to do the same thing as you. This business is very, very difficult to do on your own. I give you a perfect example of why the three of us make a good team. I'm an extremely impatient person. Me sitting down with a seller while he's gabbing about the history of the building and all that. I'm sorry. It's not my language.
Once it becomes a fully amortizing loan, we think we're going to be at about $700 per month. Again, those aren't crazy numbers, but in Boston, it's hard to buy cash flow, right? We're not real. You want to buy cash flow, and everyone talks about it, but we're buying in a class, one of the best markets in the world. We're buying these buildings because we want to sit on them. We know we believe in what it's going to be in 5 to 10 years, right? So yeah, and then finally just put in a couple final numbers on what on what equity investors are returning with us. So again, when we present this deal, we create a package for them, right? We need to tell them, look, you're going to put X amount of money, and this is going to be your return over X number of years. So, because they can't just say, oh yeah, we're going to give you 30%, but what does that really mean, right? So that's why we try to give our investors what's called a full return of 20% at least on their money. So that includes from day one when they put the money with us, including all the cash, all the cash that we get during rent, all the way up to the refinance or sale of the building. That we think that with all that money over the amount of time we're going to hold the building, we're going to get them a 20% return on their money, which is it's a pretty attractive number, right? I mean, they own a percentage of the building, so it's a pretty safe investment, right? It's not like they're a lender on it, and they're going to get 20% return with basically being a silent partner. They don't have to deal with, rehabbing everything, doing all the crap work that